All right. Good morning, everyone. Happy Tuesday to you. Welcome to the channel. I'm your host, Daniel Cody, and this is where I give commentary and reviews on all things wrestling. And before I get started, I want to thank all the viewers. Don't forget, if you enjoyed this one, like, comment, and subscribe so you can be notified on all things from the Danny channel. And today, I'm doing another special on this day tribute. I already did one a couple of days ago on Sunday from No Mercy 1999. Pretty interesting pay per view. Check that out. Also, today I'm doing an On This Day and On This Day review because 17 years ago today, on this day, on this Tuesday, on this very date of October 19th, except 2004, WWE did an event called Taboo Tuesday 2004. Now, forgive me, but that word taboo sounds a little bit something. I think it's because of what the internet did. But either way, later on, but either way, um, it's called Taboo Tuesday, and it is an event where the fans took control and actually voted the matches, the stipulations, and who would face who. And so we opened up the show with Shelton Benjamin versus Chris Jericho, and this was way before the Hurt Business started and reunified itself. But this was when Shelton Benjamin was getting a big push as a singles competitor because we remember when he was a part of the world's greatest tag team as part of Team Angle back in '03, aligned with Charlie Haas, who at the time would stay on SmackDown, as Shelton Benjamin went to Raw and on his first night pulled up the upset, rolling up Triple H. Triple H. So that was the start of a big push for Shelton Benjamin, and this was another one. This was another step in that direction as he was voted by the fans to face Chris Jericho for the Intercontinental Championship, and it was a great match, real good. It started off a lot of amateur skills on display. And after those amateur skills were on display, collar and elbow tie up, arm hooks and arm bars and things of that nature, it got a little more physical later on and lots of near falls, including when Chris Jericho hit his signature moonsault, leaping from the second rope, backflipping onto Shelton Benjamin for a near two count. Near fall after near fall, as they say on WWE 2K games. But, however, as Chris Jericho was launching himself from the second turnbuckle onto Benjamin, Benjamin caught it and went for his own signature T-bone suplex for the victory. And of course, Chris Jericho, being a good sportsman, showed sportsmanship and shook Shelton Benjamin's hand and walked off. And Shelton Benjamin wins his first singles championship. He was already a SmackDown Tag Team Champion with Charlie Haas in the previous year, but now, like I said, he started getting his push as a singles competitor, and this is where he started. And he had an amazing Intercontinental Championship reign. Going forth, we saw this event was called Taboo Tuesday, and the fans voted for matches and stipulations. But I gotta warn you, if you are a John Cena mom or have a bunch of kids who are John Cena fans, not everything about this event is suitable for children. Because in this event, we saw Carmella versus Christy Hemme. Now, just to be clear, not the Carmella that you're thinking of. There was actually another Carmella. This particular Carmella that I'm speaking of was a brunette because she had colored hair. And she was a model for an environment that I cannot speak on. And she went to become a WWE superstar for a short period of time. And after that, she went on and married a football player and became a family woman, starting a charity actually. And so she went from doing whatever that was she did in her early career to becoming a family person. So congratulations to that. And so Christy Hemme would face Carmella in a provocative match. And not only that, but Trish Stratus would defend her championship in a women's battle royal, but it was called a Fulfill Your Fantasy Women's Battle Royal. And the fans got to choose how the women would dress during that time. Now, keep in mind, this was not the PG era, and this was a very different time. This was the ruthless aggression era. And while I would give my thoughts on some of those events, I have to keep this clean. But I will say I'm kind of surprised that Molly Holly participated in that Fulfill Your Fantasy Battle Royal, because anyone that knows her personally knows she does not participate in anything that's provocative and things of that nature. And ironically enough, not to my surprise at all, she happens to be a born again religious woman. So that was quite surprising. The stipulation was that they would wrestle in schoolgirl attire. But either way, um, Trish Stratus retained her championship successfully in that battle royal. And I know Jerry Lawler was having the time of his life. Just God have mercy. But either way, I'm quite surprised that Molly participated in those conditions, considering how much of an integral woman she is. But nonetheless, all I'm saying is heads up if you're got young John Cena fans watching that pay per view, because or that if you've ordered the DVD. But either way, if you weren't satisfied with what you saw in that match, and I'm not condoning too much provocativeness, but if you've seen me before, you've probably seen me holding this game up. And in this game, they actually have a singles match as far as the Fulfill Your Fantasy is concerned, and you can choose those same options, except this time it's a singles match, but it is exclusive to the SummerSlam arena for whatever reason. But enough of that crap. Moving on to some more relevant things. A very disturbing storyline between Kane and the upcoming Gene Foot Loving Snitsky. Actually, he wasn't a foot loving guy yet. This was before all that. At this time, he was known as the Baby Killer, because there was an accident that took place on an episode of Raw where Kane was set to wrestle Gene Snitsky. Somehow, Lita ended up in the ring, and Snitsky bashed Kane in the back with a chair, and Kane accidentally fell on Lita, which, according to the storyline, killed a pregnant, killed a baby that was in Lita's womb. This was storyline, though. However, this turned Gene Snitsky into a huge heel early in his career, and a just flat out monstrous heel, as I like to call him. Ironically, at the same time, for those of you who saw the review of No Mercy 2004, you know that Kane's brother in the script, The Undertaker, is starting his rivalry with the also gigantic monster heel Heidenreich, except ironically, both of those guys were a short lived gimmick, except Snitsky lasted a little bit longer than Heidenreich did. But at least Heidenreich won a championship, a tag team championship, with Road Warrior Animal a year later after his appearance. But back to the gimmick of Snitsky on Monday Night Raw. He became known as the Baby Killer and a sadistic guy, and developed this tagline of "It wasn't my fault." That's a meme for people who want to act like they're not guilty. But either way, Snitsky became the heel of the century at the time, and Kane ended up becoming a fan favorite because of Snitsky. But this match was voted to be a chain match, not necessarily like what Brock Lesnar and The Undertaker had in 2003, No Mercy, but it was still a biker chain match. And Kane used it for a little bit, but Snitsky took control of most of the match once he got that chain on and whipped Kane. I don't want to say like a government mule because the thought of that is disturbing, but he whipped Kane with the chains like we were in an underground dungeon or something. But either way, it destroyed Kane, and with Snitsky viciously using that chain, the referee had to stop the match because Kane was hurt. And to make matters worse, Kane's neck would get crushed as Snitsky used a chair to do to him, ironically, what Kane did to Shawn Michaels. Kane would be coughing up blood later on, and so they would have to stretcher him out. But however, instead of him being stretchered out in peace, Snitsky attacked Kane while he was still wrapped on the stretcher. And one of the things that made Gene Snitsky a good heel, or made anyone a good heel, is good commentary. And JR really sold Snitsky as a heel. JR can sell anyone as a heel back in those days, especially when with the infamous SOB. Anytime JR calls you a SOB on script, you have arrived as one of the greatest heels ever. He did it to Triple H and he did it with Snitsky, and those guys happen to be great heels. So when you have a good character, a good storyline, and commentation to explore it, you did well. However, he didn't last too long, but Kane would be back for revenge at New Year's resolution. Moving on to another match, Eric Bischoff versus Eugene. Eugene recently was on Hannibal TV last year, and he talked about how he was pretty cool with Eric Bischoff, even though some said that he wasn't. But this was very entertaining, very entertaining. The stipulation was what would happen to the loser. They would either have to wear a dress, be a servant, or get their head shaved bald. Of course, Eric Bischoff attacked Eugene in the beginning of the match, but Eugene would hulk up like Hulk Hogan, boot, leg drop, 1, 2, 3, it's over. But it was the aftermath of that match that was so hilarious to me. And that was the fact that, first of all, Coach, who was the host of the show, Jonathan Coachman, would try to trick fans and insult them by saying, you guys want to see him be a servant. So, Eric, you're a servant for 5 minutes. And then Mr. McMahon came out. From a storyline standpoint, I never thought I'd be so happy to see Mr. McMahon. But either way, Mr. McMahon returns and orders Eric Bischoff in the chair. And not only does he order Eric Bischoff in the chair, but he makes Jonathan Coachman wear the other option, which was the dress. So, not that there's anything wrong with that. Just making that clear. Moving forth, after chasing Jonathan Coachman off, he had the funniest moment where he realized Eric Bischoff is gray as a ghost and is a phony son of a biscuit. That was hilarious. Then sent Coach running off. And fun fact, while Coach and McMahon are cool, Coach has been the victim of some of Mr. McMahon's greatest, coldest pranks, including a prank in North Carolina when Coach was set to be running a football pool for the WWE superstars, but was arrested because they told him it was illegal. And so he had to be carried out to be arrested and taken out in cuffs, but they wanted to cover Jonathan Coachman's head. And so they covered it with, of all things, Mr. McMahon's underwear. Whoa, gross. And so Then, after being arrested and having his head covered with McMahon's sweaty undergarments, it was later discovered that it was a prank. Evil prankster. Vince McMahon is just evil when it comes to pranks. Moving forth, Chris Benoit. First of all, there was a vote to see who would face Triple H for the World Heavyweight Championship. Chris Benoit, Edge, or Shawn Michaels, who was for some reason injured at the time. The answer was Shawn Michaels. That meant that Edge and Chris Benoit would have to face off against La Resistance for the Raw Tag Team Championships. And La Resistance took control. And it didn't help that Edge's head was not in the match because Edge was upset that he didn't get picked. And so that helped La Resistance take control because there wasn't a lot of focus. But Edge got the tag, but the ref didn't see it. And with that being said, Edge would snap and walk out on Chris Benoit. And after walking out on Chris Benoit, somehow or another, Chris was able to hold his own in that ring, defeating defeating La Resistance for the tag team championships by himself. And considering the height of Chris Benoit reminding me of a modern day Bryan Danielson, I know Chris in his mind is like, I'm the tag team champions. You guys remember that? So while Chris Benoit was able to win the championships on his own with Edge walking out, Shawn Michaels, who was injured for whatever reason, was able to try to fight against Triple H. And of course, because of his injuries, Triple H would take control of the leg and everything, targeting it, even using Ric Flair's leg lock, whom I will talk about in just a minute. Of course, despite being destroyed with his, I think it was right leg, somehow Shawn Michaels was able to fight back, deliver an elbow, and sweet chin music. And it wasn't the interference of Batista, but it was actually the interference of Edge from earlier that would cost Shawn Michaels the match against Triple H, and Triple H would retain the championship successfully. Ironically, if you pay close attention, Edge paved the way for Dolph Ziggler by storming out of the arena saying, "It should have been me." That paved the way for Dolph Ziggler to do in 2019 because as we prepare for Crown Jewel, I watched WWE Super Showdown 2019 when in the promo for Dolph versus Kofi, WWE World Championship, Dolph kept saying, "It should have been me." Edge paved the way for that. So thank you, Edge. And I hope you kick Seth Rollins' butt inside Hell in a Cell and scar him in a scar that he will never, ever heal from. But this next match that I want to talk about is really awesome. It was Legend versus Legend Killer inside of the steel cage. And it all was triggered by Ric Flair being insulted for being Triple H's butt kisser, basically. And I have to say that in a PG manner. But the fans chose steel cage match instead of submission in the other one. They chose a steel cage match. And Ric Flair has been in many steel cage matches of his own. But it was a great match. And Randy Orton, ironically, was the first to bleed. And unfortunately, needed a ice packet. He should have wore a cup. I mean, if you're Randy Orton and you're fighting Ric Flair after everything Ric Flair has put you through that year, you know you need to wear a cup. And it's a miracle that Randy had kids. It really is because he took two low blows in that match. He got busted open by the steel cage. But somehow or another, he was able to take control. And when Ric Flair tried to escape, Randy pulled him down and almost flashed the entire crowd. That would have been disturbing to see. And after flashing the crowd, he fell and got a taste of his own medicine when he fell in between his legs on the ropes. Ric Flair would get busted open by the steel cage, and somehow Ric Flair ended up stealing. This is just a joke, but I think he stole William Regal's brass knucks because he used it on Orton, only for Randy Orton to kick out and eventually go for his RKO for the victory. But that didn't stop there because, interestingly enough, former Evolution allies would end up shaking hands. It's the night started off with sportsmanship between Benjamin and Jericho, and the night ended with sportsmanship between two bloodied stars in Randy Orton and Ric Flair. A handshake in the first match, and the last match to end the night was with a handshake and an amazing match between Randy Orton and Ric Flair inside a steel cage, with Randy Orton extending him his proof as the Legend Killer. That's all the time I have for you today, and I'll be back hopefully sometime between Thursday and Friday with a review on Crown Jewel. It's going to be a semi versus an RV when Brock Lesnar and Roman Reigns fight. See you next time.